This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not provided as financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or an offer to buy or sell any securities or make any investment. The views expressed by guest speakers are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement thereof by SNN or its affiliates. SNN expressly disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast. My guest on the show today is Bryan Ganz, President and CEO of Byrna Technologies, Inc. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is BYRN on NASDAQ. Byrna is a technology company specializing in the development, manufacture, and sale of innovative, less lethal personal security solutions. I'd actually met Bryan and interviewed him when they were known as Security Devices International, and safe to say the company has come a long way since. And I invited Bryan on the show today to discuss the company's journey, as well as Byrna's business model and marketing strategy, what their competitive landscape looks like, and Bryan's 3 to 5 year vision for the company. With that, please enjoy my conversation with Bryan Ganz, President and CEO of Byrna Technologies, Inc. Bryan, thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Oh, not too shabby. I mean, look, this is like old home week for us, right? I mean, we were just literally catching up offline. I was like, I know we've done an interview with Byrna before, but then we came to realize that it wasn't as Byrna, it was as Security Devices International, the name of the company prior to the name change and all that good stuff. So figured we'd get into all that because, I mean, geez, that was 5 years ago that we did that interview, and a lot has changed since. But before we get into all of that, what would you say that one line that best describes Byrna Technologies?
Byrna's mission is to offer a safe, effective, reliable alternative to firearms. So we're looking for that non-lethal alternative to firearms. So that's really why we exist.
Very good. All right, so we're going to get into all that in a little bit. So, like I said, I've known the company for 5-6 years. Like it's been 5 years since we did that interview with you at a conference under Security Device International. But let's get the whole history of the company. When was the company founded, and what was the original thesis for its founding?
The company was founded maybe 10 years before I came in, and I came into the company 2016, 2017. So I said at the time it was called Security Devices International, and it made 40 millimeter impact rounds for law enforcement. And in case your viewers don't know what a 40 millimeter impact round looks like, it looks like this. And this is what they use in prisons and at riots. It uses a lot of kinetic energy to stop an assailant, but it's fired out of a grenade launcher. So it was only available to law enforcement. And when I was first brought on board, the company at the time was doing, a grand total of $250,000 a year in sales, exclusively to law enforcement. And I was asked by the investors, is it possible to turn this around? And as I started to look into the economic model, I discovered that law enforcement in the U.S. is a highly fragmented market. There's 18,500 agencies. Every agency makes their own procurement decision. Nobody buys anything without a live fire demonstration. You've got bureaucracy and budgetary constraints and politics and a long sales cycle. And I said, you know what? We've got to pivot away from law enforcement only and go after the consumer and private security market. The problem that we had in doing that is that this 40 millimeter impact round was highly regulated. It was regulated by the ATF, and it was regulated by the State Department. The ATF, because it used a 9 millimeter blank for propulsion, and by the State Department, because it was fired out of a grenade launcher. And the State Department took a very dim view of these grenade launchers falling into the hands of terrorists. So these launchers that our salespeople traveled around with to put on demonstrations, every night we had to contact the State Department and let them know where each launcher was. And God forbid one got stolen. I think I'd still be in Leavenworth trying to explain, how it got out of our hands. But we came up pretty quickly with a solution to the 9mm blank. So we decided we could use high pressure air, compressed air, or CO2 to fire the projectile. But what was a much harder thing to figure out is how do we get it to spin stabilize? So, and for those of your audience that don't understand what that means, what I like to say to people that understand Boston sports is if it's spin stabilized, it's a Tom Brady spiral. And if it's not spin stabilized, it's a Tim Wakefield knuckleball. So without the spin stabilization, you can't shoot it accurately. Okay, so we're trying to figure out how to get this thing to fire without the rifling in the barrel. Once you put the rifling in the barrel, it's regulated by the State Department. No rifling in the barrel. It's basically a t-shirt gun or a flare gun. Okay. I had met at SHOT Show an inventor by the name of Andre Baez, South African gentleman, who had come up with an idea to put a tail fin on the back of a projectile to cause it to spin stabilize as it traveled through the air. I called this guy down in South Africa, and I said, Andre, do you think that this technology would work on 40mm projectiles? He said, yeah, no, I do think it would work on 40mm projectiles. So he said, good, there's a airline ticket waiting for you at the Joburg airport. Hop on a plane, come on up to Boston, because I really want to talk to you about licensing your technology for our 40mm rounds. Andre comes up to Boston. And while we're talking, he says, by the way, Bryan, I've got an idea for a personal security device, looks like a gun, operates like a gun, but it shoots these chemical irritant projectiles. You know, it can stop an assailant at 60 feet, you know, won't cause serious injury or death. And all of a sudden, like when you watch the old cartoons, the light bulb goes off. And I'm thinking, if I could sell this to civilians, the market's maybe 10,000 Michigan militia types that want to shoot a watermelon off a wall at 100 paces. But if I could sell a truly effective, non-lethal personal security device, the market's in the millions. So Andre and I ended up making a deal that week. I bought his company in South Africa. I bought his patent portfolio, and I hired him. And I put him to work developing what became today the Byrna HD personal security device. That was April of 2018, right around the time you and I first met. We released the product in June of 2019. Now, from April of 2018 to June of 2019, we had to remake the company. So there were 22 employees. We got rid of all 22. We disbanded the board. We moved the office from Toronto down to my family office in Wakefield, Massachusetts. And I had a board meeting in the shower by myself every day. And we rebuilt the company. And as the group in South Africa were developing the product, we implemented a back office. We set up a distribution center in Fort Wayne. And most importantly, we built out a Shopify website because our idea was to sell this online. Okay. 13 months, 14 months later, June 1, we go live online. And the first day we sell one. And the second day we sell one. I think the third day we sell none. I'm thinking to myself, wow, I really screwed up. And because I had gone out and raised a lot of money from FOBs, friends of Bryan. And, you know, I was concerned, did I misjudge the market? Now, during this whole process, there were 3D printed models. And I think you saw one of our early 3D printed models at the LD MicroCap conference.
Yep.
These 3D printed models we took to gun shows because we thought gun owners were our audience. And the reason we thought gun owners were our audience is I'm a gun owner. And honestly, I often thought, how quick would I be to pull the trigger? And the answer, if I'm really honest with myself, is not very quick. You know, I've got a lot to lose. But then you think, if I hesitate, is that a fatal hesitation for me? And if I don't hesitate, am I making a fatal mistake? With the Byrna, there are no fatal mistakes. if I make a mistake, if I shoot the paperboy coming up the driveway, well, you know what? I'll leave a bigger tip at Christmas. But nobody's going to the morgue. Nobody's going to jail. So we really thought gun owners would resonate with this. So as we went to gun shows, I would tell the story. I would say, I'm a gun owner. I don't know how quick I'd be to pull the trigger. And we saw people nodding. We knew we were striking a responsive chord.
Right. You realize that there was like a bit of an education piece there, right? Where it was like, all right, there's other deterrents out there. There's, like mace and all that kind of stuff. But and there's like BB guns and like air rifles that have different tech. But this was a completely different thing. You were really trying to commercialize these types of deterrents to fellow gun owners. That's really where it seems like you're going after, right?
Yes. And we were looking at the civilian consumer market because we were not the first people to come up with this idea. Pepperball existed for a long time before this. There was a company, Mission Less Lethal, FN Herstal. There were a number of companies in this space, but they all focused on law enforcement. We were the first one to say, we believe that there's a consumer market. So anyways, I reached out to a number of gun reviewers. I think if I can get them to review this, we can get it in front of gun owners. We'll start to get some interest in the product. And I reached out to a guy by the name of Don Porter. He has a YouTube website called Such00. And I called Don up and I said, Don, I think this, would be of interest to your audience, to your viewers. Would you do a review of this? And he says, Bryan, I really don't think they're going to be interested in it. But with my incredible charm and a check for $10,000, he agreed to review this. We ended up the first month getting 150,000 views. I think today, it's still on his website. If you go to Such00, I think we have about 4.5 million views of this video. And if you want to see it, I actually get shot in the video. So there's that element to it as well. But we started to see sales pick up. And that second half of 2019, sales went from 1 a day to, by the time we got to the end of the year, we were at about 10 units a day. So we were feeling pretty good, like we're starting to get the word out. And we saw this climb basically by word of mouth in 2020. And we went from, 1,000 people visiting our website and selling 10 a day to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. By the time we get to June of 2020, we're selling about 6,000 units a day, getting about 6,000 people a day coming to our website, selling about 60 units a day. June 9, I'm sitting in a meeting and the phone rings and I look down, it says Fox News. So I take the call. The person on the phone says, I'm the assistant to Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is going to do a piece on less lethal tonight on his show. He's wondering if you have any video that you can send down. Now, we had just completed kind of an animated how it works video, which we sent down. And I'm thinking, okay, Sean's going to do some, generic less lethal piece, and he's going to talk about pepper spray and tasers. And it's not what happened. What happened was he says, it's a really dangerous world out there. Everybody needs to be protected. I'm a gun owner, but you know what? I'm afraid of taking somebody's life. And I tried this thing the other day called a Byrna. And here, watch this video. And he plays our entire video. It's like an infomercial. And my phone starts going crazy. So like every good Shopify entrepreneur, I've got my phone set to cha-ching every time I make a sale. I think the phone's going to catch on fire. I look down, there's 55,000 people on our website. That night, between 9 p.m. and midnight, we took 2,500 orders. And between midnight and 6 in the morning, because it played again on the West Coast, we took another 2,000 orders. By 6 in the morning, we had taken 4,500 orders for $10 million. Now, to put that in perspective, our sales per year were 924,000 for the whole year. Now we had taken $4.5 million of orders in one night. But, I've been in manufacturing my entire career. And as I always say to the folks working for me, whenever the production and demand get out of whack in either direction, it really stresses the business. And this was incredibly stressful. So also keep in mind, this was during the pandemic. Nobody can travel. We need to now ramp up production from 60 a day to 500 a day. And we need to do it without the ability to travel in the middle of a supply chain disruption. So we end up having to do everything through these Zoom calls. We bought the third-party manufacturing facility in South Africa, and we converted our manufacturing facility in Fort Wayne, our distribution facility in Fort Wayne, to a manufacturing facility. And we ended up getting production by the end of the year up to 500. We went from 10 employees at the beginning of 2020 to 150 by the end of 2020. We fulfilled all the orders, and we ended the year with 16.7 million in sales. Okay. The next year, we projected that we would double our sales, that we'd do 33 million. But on April 3rd, and I remember the date because that's the date of my bar mitzvah 60 years ago. But on April 3rd, Sean mentioned us again. And we sold another $10 million of product. And we ended up 2021 with 42 million in sales. Wow. And what that did for us, it did a couple things. One, it put us on the map. So we really never went backwards. Our sessions never really dipped that much. He gave us the credibility that we needed, but he also helped drive the stock price up. And we did a re-IPO in July of 2021, and we raised a net $56 million at $21 a share. And that gave us all the ammo we needed to now start to grow the business, to expand the business. Because honestly, up until that point, we were doing this on a shoestring budget. We were putting the plane together as we were flying it. I had to hire, a CFO, and, we were going into the year with a material weakness. We had to deal with the SEC and straightening out all those issues. We had to get a real auditing firm. I mean, there was just a lot that needed to be done. In 2022, we ended up doing 48 million in sales. And most of that growth was international. Of the 48 million, 9 million was international. So to a certain extent, we had drifted backwards a little bit in terms of our domestic sales and our online sales, largely because we didn't get another, Hannity bump. So this was all now just driven by advertising. And most of our advertising was social media advertising, Facebook, Google, Instagram,
and billboards. I remember I used to drive by one in LA all the time.
And billboards. Yeah. And people ask me, Brian, were billboards effective? I'd say, yeah, they were very effective. Everywhere we had a billboard, sales went up. They just weren't cost effective. Our ROAS on billboards was in the low 2s. So, maybe if we had been a bigger buyer and we could have bought them at a better price, billboards would have remained effective. It was the same thing with OTT TV. It was also effective. We were advertising in limited markets, but it wasn't cost effective. What was cost effective was social media. So we really put all of our eggs in that basket. And again, we were not allowed to advertise on mainstream media. We were not allowed in most of the mainstream broadcast TV channels or cable TV channels or, digital and print media. So we really were limited to and if you think, what do you normally see on billboards? It's like gun shows and gentlemen's clubs. So, we were kind of a natural fit, but we ended up really not staying with that advertising channel. Anyways, 2023, this last year, we run into two issues. The first issue is we introduced a new product, the Byrna LE. We introduced it at SHOT Show to great fanfare. And when we went into production, we had production problems. And we had to suspend production in January We had a lot of orders that we couldn't fulfill. We stopped taking orders for the LE. We had to create a wait list. And it was a real black eye for us. The question was, how come we're such idiots? We can't get this production right. It was a reasonable question. We rushed this product to market because we wanted to get it for the SHOT Show. We wanted to be able to debut it on range day, but we pushed too hard, and we paid the price. The second problem, which was much more of an existential threat, was that on March 22nd, Facebook, Instagram, and Google all at the same time declared our product contraband product and prohibit us from advertising on their sites. Okay. Now, they all say that you can't advertise weapons, and we had been kicked off of their sites at other periods of time, but we would always call them up and say, hey, we're the guys with the white hats. We're the guys that are selling the non-lethal products. And they'd say, oh yeah, sorry about that. And they would reinstate our account. Not this time. This time they were adamant that we couldn't advertise on their channel.
Yeah, let me stop you there, because I mean, this is usually I like to ask this question a little bit later, but I mean, when it comes to issues that you had to experience and then overcome, I mean, that right there could be the red herring, right? Where you're just like, all right, this is our main channels that we're marketing our products to, and now we're at their mercy and we're just getting kicked off. And I mean, they're telling us why, but they're not coming back to us with the solution for how to overcome it. So how did you overcome that?
And there's no appeal. I mean,
right.
you try to appeal, but trying to get a human being at Facebook or Google or Amazon, it's not easy.
You get to talk to their AI at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Bryan, this is actually a perfect place to stop, because I one of the questions I love asking people on here is, a big issue that you ran into in running the business and you were able to overcome. And I don't think it gets much bigger than that, is getting off of your main marketing channels, which was social media. But it looks like you did overcome it. I mean, on your investor deck that I was sent before our meeting today, you have on slide 12 that your average daily web sessions, there was a steady decline quarter over quarter from Q1, Q2, Q3, but then Q4, it shot right back up above to even where you were at the beginning of the year, where you were at 25,000 a day. And then in Q4 2023, your average daily web sessions was over 30,000. So how did you overcome this issue?
I have to tell you, in retrospect, it was really an existential threat. So when we were kicked off of these social media channels, we saw an overnight 60% decline in web traffic. So we went from 25,000 visitors a day down to 10,000 overnight. Now, we did not see a commensurate decline in sales immediately, because there's a long tail to this web traffic. Most people don't buy the first time they come to the website. So sales held up, for a month or two, but then they also started to decline. And when we gave our first quarter earnings call, which was in April of 2023, at that point we said, look, given what's happened to us with the ban on social media advertising, we are going to pull our guidance. We do not know what we are going to do. Of course, the stock reacted terribly to that. We traded down, I think, as low as $2.24. And people were concerned, what does the future look like? I can tell you the entire management team at Byrna was really scrambling to try to figure out, how do we get the word out? Now, there have been other industries where people are banned from advertising on, mainstream media properties, the gun industry, the tobacco industry. But at that time, these were already mature industries. They already had a large installed customer base. The problem for Byrna is the vast majority of people have no idea what less lethal is. And even fewer people know who Byrna is. So without the ability to get in front of people, we were really at an impasse. So going back to my earlier story, I picked up the phone and I called Sean Hannity. And it's not like Sean and I are good friends, but we've been friendly. He helped us out quite a bit early on, and we had stayed in touch. And I called Sean. I said, "Look, Sean, this is BS. These companies are, abridging our First Amendment rights, and we're the good guys, and we're the antidote to the epidemic of gun violence. And can't you talk about this on your show? Isn't this, a great First Amendment issue?" And he says, "Bryan, not to burst your bubble, but nobody cares. Nobody cares what's happening to you." He says, "But, why don't you advertise with me? Why don't you advertise on my show?" So I said, "You know what? Not a bad idea." And he hooks me up with the folks at Fox News, and we send them our creative, and they come back to us and they say, "No, we have a no weapons policy. Can't advertise on Fox News." So I called Sean back and I said, "I appreciate it, but you know what? They're not going to let us advertise on Fox News." And he says, "Well, how about advertising with me on radio?" I said, "You know what? I'm not a big fan of radio. I don't really listen to radio myself. And we think this is a product that requires a visual medium." He said, "Bryan, trust me on this." So we signed a 3-month deal with iHeart to advertise on Sean's afternoon drive time radio show. And that started on September 5th. And overnight, sales and sessions started to climb. And what we realized is it was not radio per se. It was the celebrity endorsement aspect of it. It was, what Phil Knight understood with Nike, that, people that follow certain celebrities will listen to what they have to say. So Sean, who had been a consumer of ours for many years, is passionate about our product. And it came across when he started talking about our product. So all of a sudden, we're back in the game. Now we have 3 really important questions. The first question is this replicable? Because as good as Sean is, his audience is still, very small, and we need to use this with other celebrity endorsers. 2, is it scalable? Can we just keep pouring more money into this and see the same type of, 5, 6, 7, 8 times ROAS? And is it sustainable? Now, over the last 6 months that we've been doing this, we have answered 2 of the 3 questions. It is replicable. We have now rolled this out to Glenn Beck, Judge Jeanine Pirro, Bill O'Reilly. In every case, we have ROAS numbers well above our minimum threshold of 5x. It is not particularly scalable. It's scalable in terms of finding other celebrity endorsers, but it's not scalable in, if we're on Sean 5 days a week, by running 3 ads 5 days a week, we don't get 3 times the return. Sort of like once you're on the show, that's all you're going to get. In terms of sustainability, so far it's proven to be very sustainable. And in talking to the folks at iHeart, their argument is, look at all of these advertisers that we've had for many, many years, the same advertisers on the same shows. Clearly, these are performance-based advertisers. They would not be doing this if it wasn't continuing to work. So far, we believe that it is sustainable. So we saw the web sessions start to climb. The most interesting thing is we saw conversion rates climb, or stay steady, or in fact climb. So, our concern was, as we start spending all this money, are we going to see our conversion rates start to deteriorate as we're getting new people to the website? But in fact, just the opposite has been true. So in Q4, we ended the quarter at $15.6 million in revenue. Now, it appeared to be nominally down from the $16 million the year before, but the year before had $4.5 million of international sales. And this year had 200,000 of international sales. So in terms of our sales on Byrna.com and Amazon.com, we're up sharply, more than 33% increase on those 2 channels. As we went into Q1, I gave the analysts a little bit of a kick in the ass because they had their consensus for Q1 at 8.6 million. 8.6 million is absurdly low given the changes we've now made. And I gave them one data point to help wake them up to this fact. I said in December, which is the first month of our first quarter, because we're a November fiscal filer, in December, our sales on Byrna.com were up 89% year over year. And our sales on Amazon.com were up 98% year over year. Just to say, guys, go back to the drawing board and revise your first quarter estimates, which they did. I think our first quarter estimates are now around 12 million. This is still too low. We are going to flash our revenue number the first week of the new quarter, which is a week from now. So next Thursday, we're going to put out a press release telling the street what our first quarter number is, because the fundamental business model has changed so dramatically with this celebrity endorsement model that we need to get the street understanding that this is not the same company we were prior to this pivot. So although this was incredibly stress-inducing, honestly, Bobby, it was a blessing in disguise, because we saw our performance on social media start to decline anyways. We were getting ROAS numbers in the high threes, low fours. With this celebrity endorsement model, we're getting ROAS numbers in the high fives and mid sixes. So it is a dramatically more effective model. And when you think about us and our gross profit margin on DTC, direct to consumer, on Byrna.com and Amazon.com is well in excess of 60%. If we have a 5x ROAS, for every dollar we spend on advertising, we're getting $5 in gross profit. Okay, $5 of sales, we're getting $3 in gross profit. So it's extremely accretive to us. And frankly, the real question now is, what do we do to take it from here? We are starting with a new endorser this month, coming up in March. And we're also looking to bring on some sports figures as celebrity endorsers. One of our board members, a gentleman by the name of Len Elmore, is a former player for the New York Knicks, ran a sports management company, and we're going to be working closely with him to reach out to athletes to see if we can bring them into the roster of celebrity endorsers.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you for the full overview. You caught us up to, just everything. Caught us up to where the company is currently at today. And just for the record, we're recording this on Monday, February 26, 2024. So I want to take one kind of big step back, and that has to do with the company's moat and understanding. I know you have IP, you bought, I apologize for forgetting the name of the company that you bought, but that has all the IP for the actual Byrna technology itself, but I'm just curious as to, what are some of the regulations around Byrna's actual firearm? And then also from there, what's stopping some of these other companies out there that are saying, oh, we actually have a better, gun-like, look-like deterrent that we can then go on the market and start selling and work with all these endorsers as well. So I'm just curious as to how you think about that.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And honestly, we love our competitors. We wish we had more competitors, because right now we are the dominant player in this segment of less lethal. Axon is obviously a much bigger player, but they're focused on body cam and law enforcement. But for the segment focused on consumer and civilians with these launchers, we are the dominant player. Our product is heads and tails above our competitors, and it's much better than our competitors for a couple of reasons. First, we were the only product that was designed from scratch to be a self-defense weapon. Most of the other products were originally paintball guns that were modified, or in some cases just rebranded for self-defense. So the biggest thing that we were able to do is we came up with the patented technology for first trigger pull pierce. What does that mean? For anybody that has used a paintball gun or any CO2 launcher, you know when you screw in the CO2, you hear as you puncture the CO2. That CO2 will leak out in the course of 24 to 48 hours, which means that you, A, either have to replace your CO2 every day, B, don't pierce the CO2 until you need it. But, for a self-defense weapon, that can be problematical. You don't know when you're going to need it. You run into a bad guy and you say, hold on, Mr. Bad Guy, I just got to screw in my CO2. I'll be right with you. Or C, you have a weapon where you do not need to puncture the CO2, but on the first pull of the trigger, you will both puncture the CO2 and fire the projectile. And that was our technology developed in-house. Now, there was another company called Mission Less Lethal that was part of a big paintball company called Tippmann. It's now went bankrupt and they're called Core. But they had the technology for the ability to pull the trigger and puncture the CO2 and pull it again and fire the projectile. So it was a second trigger pull pierce technology. We bought that as well. So we now own both first trigger pull and second trigger pull patents. Our biggest competitor is Pepperball. There you have to still screw it in, and they've been in business much longer than us, which makes it, number one, inefficient for consumers, but also extraordinarily expensive for law enforcement, because every day they've got to screw in a new CO2, or frankly, every shift. If it's used on multiple shifts, that may cost them $3 a day times 365 days. That could be $1,000 just in CO2 costs. So that patent, both the one we developed and the one we purchased, is a very big moat. The second big moat for us is our launcher is dramatically smaller than our competitors' launchers. So one of the things, and this is not patent, it's more know-how, is how to get all of that stopping power into a very small piece of real estate. This launcher across the top, across the barrel, is the same measurement as my Glock 19. Down the grip, it's the same measurement as my Glock 19. It's wider because it's 68 caliber rather than 9mm, but it's a relatively small weapon. It looks like a gun, and the form factor is a huge deterrent. Nobody has figured out how to get this much stopping power into such a small piece of real estate. Now, when you ask about a moat, they'll figure it out. Sooner or later, they'll figure it out. By that time, our new launcher, the Byrna Compact launcher, will be out. This is 72% the size of our current launcher. It is currently in prototype testing. We expect to launch it early in 2025. And it will have the same stopping power as our existing launcher, but in a much smaller form factor. And we think not only is that going to be a huge moat to protect us, but we think that this smaller launcher takes us into markets that we have not been able to penetrate yet. So, for example, the distance on this launcher between the back of the grip and the trigger is pretty long. For a lot of people with small hands, and particularly for women, the launcher is too big. It's too big for them to be effective. For people that like to conceal carry, it's bulky, it's big, it's hard to wear in your clothes in the summer. By going to a launcher that's this size, this fits easily into your jacket pocket. It's going to be easy for a woman to get her hands around the trigger. It is modeled in terms of the size on a Sig Sauer P365, which is the most popular handgun in the world. We announced at this last earnings call that the former head of new product development at Sig Sauer is now Byrna's head of new product development. When he was there, they released the Sig Sauer P365 to tremendous fanfare and an enormous jump in sales. We're hoping that this smaller launcher gives us both the moat, but also opens up the market of women and concealed carry advocates. So we think those are the moats we have. We think they're technological, they're first mover, and the fact that, you know, Byrna is to a certain extent becoming synonymous with less lethal.
Absolutely. So real quick, also, just to get kind of the nuts and bolts around the purchase process for the customer. You know, I mean, I'm in California. You know how difficult it is to buy a gun here, and also the wait times, especially recently after the horrific events of 10/7. I mean, it's, you know, the lead times to get any kind of gun out here it takes a very, very long time. You know, so can you give a little bit of color about, you know, the actual, how long it takes, you know, from point of I want to buy this to now you own your own Byrna and you have ammunition, you're ready to go?
Okay, so first, the Byrna is legal in all 50 states. There are no federal regulations against the Byrna. There are certain municipalities where this type of weapon is not legal. They include New York City, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, and some smaller municipalities. And there is a number of states that ban the chemical irritant rounds, including your state of California. We cannot sell the rounds filled with tear gas and pepper. That said, our biggest market, California. So people buy the rounds, the kinetic kit. So they have just a 3-gram plastic projectile. Getting hit with it hurts like hell. There's a tremendous amount of stopping power. If you watch that Such video, or if you go on our website, you'll see pictures of me and many others getting hit with that round. It is a very capable launcher, even without the chemical irritant rounds. Okay, so now you don't have a background check, you don't have a waiting period, you don't need a license or a permit to buy this. 75% of our sales are online, either through byrna.com or amazon.com. The other 25% are through dealers. If you go online, you can, you know, it'll ship in a day or 2 days. You'll have your launcher. It has to go by ground because of the CO2 in it, but you'll have your launcher in a week. You know, unless, you know, during the Christmas period, we were backlogged, you know, it took a little bit longer, but for the most part, what you order will get you in a week. If you want to go to a store and try it out, you can go on our website and go to the dealer locator, and you can find stores near you. Now, it is carried in Bass Pro and Cabela's and Shields and Sportsman's Warehouse. But I talked about on the earnings call these new premier dealers that we have. So these premier dealers are really interesting. They are all sort of Byrna devotees, and they love the Byrna, and they wanted to create a store to sell the Byrna, to provide training in their neighborhoods. We have 16 premier dealers. They have to have at least 50% of their revenues come from Byrna products, and they can only sell non-lethal products. You know, our first premier dealer was a guy out of Hawaii who stopped by our company-owned store in Las Vegas. We have 2 shooting lanes in the back. He went and he tried it out, and he said, "Do you have any dealers in Hawaii?" "No." He said, "I'd like to be a dealer." So he bought 20 launchers. He went back to Oahu, and that weekend he sold all of them out of the back of his minivan, and he ordered 100 more. This was 2022. From April of 2022 through the end of the year, he did $800,000 in sales and was our dealer of the year. In 2023, he did $2.2 million in sales out of a 1,200 square foot store called Live Safe Hawaii. Obviously, when we saw what this guy Kurt was doing in Hawaii, we said, you know what, we got to figure out how to bottle this and replicate this. And we ended up last year, between May and the end of the year, November, we ended up signing 15 more premier dealers. Our goal this year is to sign up another 16 premier dealers. Although, Bobby, it was interesting. After my earnings call, I did get a call from an investor group saying, would we be interested in giving them the right to open up 10 of these at one time? So we do think there's the potential for investors to open up a number of premier dealers in a certain region. It is a quasi-franchise model. We don't charge a franchise fee, but in every other way, it works like a franchise. So people can either go online and order it and get it very quickly, or they can go into one of these premier dealers where one of the requirements of a premier dealer is they have a range. So you can shoot it before you buy it. Or you can go to one of the big box stores like Bass Pro and buy it.
Got it. So, another question that I'm sure you get asked a lot, when it comes to, this, because there's a lot of education involved here, right? On the non-lethal side, and you're basically on one side, you're building a business, you have 2023, fiscal 2023, you guys did almost 43 million, but I'm sure you also get the questions like, okay, well, where's the turn to where, what's the path to profitability here, right? And you guys are doing, it sounds like you're doing everything you can, right? You're getting celebrity doors, everything like that. So what is that path, in your opinion, to get you over the hump?
We believe we've now reached that point where going forward, we should be profitable every quarter. So we were adjusted EBITDA profitable in Q4. And I would say every quarter in 2023, we expect to be adjusted EBITDA profitable. At our current run rate, our EBITDA percentage is in the mid to high single digits. We are taking most of the money and plowing it back into the business. We're plowing it back into the business in a number of different areas. One is the development of these premier dealers. The second is we are going to be initiating a law enforcement effort this year. We're looking to really start to take advantage of the fact that we've become one of the leading players in the civilian space to try to develop the law enforcement sales. And then, of course, we're developing new products. We're investing in incremental production capacity. I would expect, as we get close to 100 million in sales, which should be the next 2 to 3 years, that our profitability will climb into the mid to high teens in terms of EBITDA margin. And as we eclipse 150 million, which I think is probably the 5-year plan, we should see adjusted EBITDA numbers in the 20s. And I think that's probably, our terminal level of EBITDA profitability is probably close to or maybe 30%, as the operating leverage really starts to kick in.
Got it. Another question is, I'm hearing the story and everything right here. And, as you said, you're, you kind of are leading the space basically on the consumer side for non-lethal weapons. What's stopping like a Smith & Wesson or one of these gun companies from just saying, you know what, bring in Byrna, they'll handle all the non-lethal side for those that, maybe are still not super comfortable with getting like the full, lethal weapon, and owning that. Like, let's just get the Byrna, call it a day. We'll now utilize all our marketing channels and push it out that way. What's stopping one of these players from coming in and scooping you up?
We don't think anything is stopping them other than their own reticence about this space and honestly, valuations. So, these are companies that, if they're public, trade at 5 times EBITDA. We trade at 5 times revenues. So it's, and Axon trades at 12 times revenue. So it's a completely different space. So I think that's part of the issue. That said, we have pursued partnerships with these companies because we do think that the best thing that could happen to us is for one of the major gun companies to embrace less lethal. So up until now, a lot of the gun companies have been really anti less lethal, thinking that we're a threat. The NRA has been anti less lethal, thinking that it's a dangerous path to go down, and that if there is a truly effective non-lethal alternative, that there'll be a greater cry for gun control. We don't believe that. We think, in fact, just the opposite is true. I sometimes joke that the Byrna is a gateway drug to gun ownership. My wife died many, many years ago, and I was a single dad of 3 daughters. There's nothing that focuses your attention on your kid's safety more than being a single dad of 3 daughters. They were always upset that I had guns, that I was a member of the NRA. We live in Boston, a pretty liberal enclave. But when I started producing Byrnas, I got them each a Byrna. My youngest daughter is a doctor now, was in medical school at the time, would get out of the hospital late at night, bad parts of Boston, and was scared to death walking to her car. And I gave her a Byrna with a Crimson Trace laser on the front. And I said, if you feel like somebody's following you, put the red dot right on their chest. If they don't turn around immediately and apologize, they mean you no harm, and you can shoot them. And if they do turn around immediately and apologize, you should also apologize, because they probably just, pooped their pants, seeing that red dot on their chest. But it gave my daughter a sense of empowerment to be able to live safe. And that was the connotation of the phrase live safe. We wanted people to have the ability to not be afraid to live safe. So, we think that, it should be attractive to gun companies. There has been one gun company, which will remain unnamed, who has approached us, who we have spoken to about developing a product for them. And the idea being that although this would be sold under their brand name, it would bring visibility to the space. So if all of a sudden every gun owner knew that less lethal was a thing, we think that the market, the pie, would get so much bigger, and we would always get a very large segment of that pie. So we don't look at the gun companies as being adversaries. We look at them opportunistically, that if we can actually get one of them to produce a non-lethal weapon, whether it's produced by us or not, that it will expand the size of the market.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that your personal loss, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And yeah. I mean, look, in thinking about the non-lethal options, I mean, I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Like, I mean, we're both of the Jewish community, and ever since 10/7, it's been very prevalent. Something that we think about a lot now is like, what options are there out there to protect our family? And as somebody that's always been, started going to gun ranges, is kind of starting to poke around a little bit. That's always been something that held me back from just making that purchase, right? Is just going in and understanding how powerful a gun truly is once you actually go to the range, versus maybe picking up something that might be non-lethal and yet still feeling that sense of security. So that message definitely resonates with me.
It's interesting. I just want to add, this post October 7th, we got a lot of interest from the Jewish community. And there was a chat group in New Jersey where people were sharing their stories and asking each other, what should we do? Should we get a gun? And somebody says, I've heard about Byrna. So they start talking about Byrna. And then, of course, they reached out to us. And as a chat group, they bought 165 Byrnas. So we've seen a lot of anxiety among Jewish groups and organizations, and a number of them starting to take this into their own hands and using Byrna as a solution.
Absolutely. No. So, look, we've covered so much here today, and I'm sure we could probably talk for another couple hours because, there's a lot to cover. But you pretty much answered all my main questions in the overview and everything like that. So my final question for you here today, and this is how I close out every interview, Bryan, for you, in your opinion, where do you want to see this company in 3 to 5 years? And what would you say are the inflection points that'll get you there?
Look, as I said, I think that we can easily be at 150 million or more in sales over the course of the next 5 years. And the only limitation really is our own ability to grow. So when we talk about the addressable market, we believe we're just scratching the surface of the addressable market. So I started off this discussion saying, I wanted to produce this product for me. As a gun owner, I wanted a non-lethal option. We know that resonates with gun owners. There are 100 million of us. What's a reasonable percentage for us to get? Is it 5%, 10%, 20%? So far, we've sold 360,000 launchers to 250,000 separate individuals. We are at 1/4 of 1% of the gun market. We also, about 1/3 of our sales are to non-gun owners, people who, for whatever reason, philosophically opposed, or they've got small kids at home, or their wife would leave them if they bought a gun. They don't own a gun. They are also our customers. So my goal is for us to help be part of the antidote to the epidemic of gun violence by giving both gun owners and non-gun owners a non-lethal alternative. And in the process, we can be, a billion or multi-billion-dollar company. The market is there. It's just how fast can we grow on a sustainable level?
Very good. All right, well, Bryan, with that, where can our audience go and find more information on Byrna Technologies?
Yeah, we would love for people to come to our website. It's www.byrna.com, BYRNA.com.
Absolutely. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for joining me here today. Really do appreciate it. Good luck. Stay safe. And I'll see you in Vegas.
Great. Bobby, thanks so much.
Thank you, Bryan.
Take care.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not provided as financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or an offer to buy or sell any securities or make any investment. The views expressed by guest speakers are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement thereof by SNN or its affiliates. SNN expressly disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast.